The one who talks about money early and often wins. When you're talking to a prospect, if you avoid money, talking about their budget, talking about what they're willing to spend, what they have spent in the past, what they intend to spend in the future, if you avoid that question, including the one about how much you charge, if you avoid this, you will lose. You should be able to talk to a prospect and just bring up budget like it was nothing, like you were just talking about, hey, look, those are nice flowers out there. How's your budget? This is something that many people struggle with. And I'm not talking about just people new to building an agency. I'm talking about people who've been doing it for years, many years, freak out every time the money question comes up. Recently, I was watching a webinar from an agency owner. And what was really telling was he did this great presentation, very educational, very helpful. And then when it was time to talk about the money, because he was trying to sell something at the end, when it came time to that, his voice changed. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm so scared, I'm going to freak out. Like, oh yes, I want you to buy my stuff. Like it was just painful. It was painful to sit through. And with a business partner of mine, I sat in on a sales call with him just to be able to help him out, give him some pointers. It was more of a business development call, but we needed to bring up money. And when he got to the point where he was asking about the budget of the company, his voice changed. He went into what I call meek Mike. He went into this meek mode. His voice was all very powerful, commanding, and he's doing a great job, just doing a very good job, diving into the business and diving into the business problems that this company wanted to have solved. And then the money came up. When it came time for the money, his voice changed. And every prospect can tell when you're uncomfortable talking about money. And when you're uncomfortable talking about money, they now have complete control over the rest of this engagement, because they don't even have to get comfortable talking about money. They can just play off the fact that you are uncomfortable talking about money, and then they win, meaning you are going to charge less. They're going to dominate the engagement. They're going to tell you what to do. They're going to get you to do more work than is in the scope, the agreement that you have all signed and said, yes, we're going to stick to this. They'll be able to dominate that. Why? Because you're afraid to speak about money. So to get comfortable talking about money, you have to bring it up early. In every conversation with a prospect, you have to bring it up early. Even with a client, you have to bring it up early. If something goes wrong in a project, you have to bring up the money. If they are delaying and there's going to be more charges coming up in the future, you have to bring it up. If you back off from that, if you come at it like I call it, like this whole meek Mike idea, if you come at it like, oh gosh, I'm so sorry, but to do the new things that you asked for, well, gosh, I feel bad about this, but I don't. Well, we're gonna have to charge more money, and the client's gonna say no, and you're gonna go, oh, okay. Right? That's what happens when you come at this with a fear of speaking about money. So if you wait too long to speak about money, and this happens with, I'll just stick with prospects. This happens with prospects all the time. And it's crazy. Someone will go through 3 or 4 conversations with a prospect, possibly as much as 3 or 4 hours dedicated to a prospect, all to find out when the money conversation finally gets brought up. Usually, because in this kind of case, it's usually brought up by the prospect who finally just says, they start thinking, I just don't even know how much this is going to cost. And the person's not telling me, so I'm just going to bring it up. Because your prospect is usually uncomfortable talking about money too. So the prospect finally comes around to, how much is this going to cost? And then that's when you start to stammer, and well, it's going to be well, okay, so it's usually about I don't know, let's just call it $3,000, and then the client's like, no, that's too much. I was thinking more like $500, and the person's just like, oh my gosh, okay, I'll take the $500. I've seen this over and over again. And I see it even in far bigger accounts. Somebody who's used to selling something around, say, $20,000, $25,000. They're used to selling something like that. And then a project comes along and it needs to be $75,000 or $100,000 to actually serve this client appropriately. If they became a client and you got that project, and you are going to have to charge 3, 4, 5 times what you had previously been charging to be able to serve this client properly. And you will panic. I've seen it over and over again. So many people panicking when they start putting it off. They start putting off this conversation about needing to talk about how much this is really going to be. And when it finally comes around, you will find many times that the client says, no, it's not in our budget. You've wasted a lot of time. So we've talked about bringing it up early in the conversation, but what about often? We need to be able to have a money conversation often, and it comes up frequently, from things like the budget to your fees to what they've spent in the past, what they wish to spend in the future. There's a variety of money conversations that come up in the course of doing business. So if you talk about money early and often, you'll stay in charge of that initial engagement. And the longer you stay in charge of the relationship between your prospect and yourself, the longer you stay in charge, the greater relationship you'll develop with them as a client and vendor. You'll be more of a partner than just a vendor, because the client now starts to see you as a trusted advisor, because you're not afraid to have the hard conversations, and the hardest one being money. So if you get comfortable talking about money early and often, then you are going to have a greater relationship with all of your clients. And even with prospects that don't become clients, they will respect you far more, because you will be a rare instance where they are trying to solve a problem and the person they're talking to is comfortable talking about business problems, which revolve around money. That is a very powerful skill to have. Practice it. Practice bringing up money. First, if you're really uncomfortable bringing up money, then you should just go into your bathroom, look in the mirror, and start bringing it up. So what's your budget? My fees are between $100,000 and $50,000. Just get very comfortable, just looking at yourself in the mirror, keeping a straight face, and just saying the money questions very confidently. Then after you get good at that, it's time to start practicing with other human beings. You don't even have to practice with a prospect yet. Just do it with a spouse, do it with a friend, do it with a coworker, do it with a peer, do it with somebody who is going to be able to give you some feedback and maybe even film it so you can see whenever you're doing the role playing, when you get uncomfortable talking about the things that are critical to your own success. And when you start bringing up money, does your voice change to meek Mike, or does it stay strong and confident? Then after you've practiced, it's time to do it with a prospect. And record your calls. Record your calls with your prospects, because you need to actually go back and listen, because I bet you anything there will be a quiver. And it's still, even after 2 decades, it still happens to me every once in a while where I'll stumble over my words when it's around the money issue. I'll stammer a little bit. I do that a lot anyways, but it changes. It'll show up and I'll catch myself. I'm like, oh gosh, I'll realize it. because I know I know when I'm confidently projecting out my price. I know when I'm confident when I'm asking for the client and the prospect to give me money information. After you record your call, review it, go back through, find the places where you didn't stay confident, where you shied away from the money conversation. And then the final step is go to your current clients and start having money conversations with them. I'm sure you've got quite a few clients that you really need to have some sort of money conversation. You need to raise your rates because the rates that you started charging them are way too low. You are doing more work that they've requested that you're not getting paid for, so you need to get paid for that. And there's probably other work that you should be doing for them, but you've been afraid to go back to them and ask them to buy more from you, which is a money conversation. Do those things. Go through, practice it by yourself, practice it with a friend, practice it with a prospect, practice it with a client. Get good at having money conversations early and often. Thank you for watching. I hope this helps you. Like, subscribe, follow, share, do the whole socials. And I will see you in the next video.